Alrighty, what is up, guys? Ronaldo here. Welcome back to the channel. Wanted to give you guys a pretty big update right now. Obviously, we finally saw some movement, and I guess obviously with the bullish case and the case that I'm hoping for, and I think that's still pretty likely, is it's kind of like wake me up when September ends. Maybe you have one more kind of bearish month, and then you have your typical October, and then a potential peak for a lot of altcoins in November. History would tell you based on halving for your cycle, 18 months after Bitcoin halving, that's always when it's peaked out. It would be an October peak, and then it's like 2017 into 2018. A lot of alts can peak out. I don't know, November, December, something like that. Obviously speculative. We'll see what happens. It's still in the AVAX long, which is surprisingly, it's one of the few alts that's held up really, really well. So that was a trade I gave in advance, and you've been immune so far to a lot of the pain. And if you're interested in the Discord for some of these trades in advance, take profits, stop losses, entry points, check out the Discord down below. It's pretty much all swing trading that I do. You got some other stuff by KMac and Nightshade. Both are excellent in there as well. And we do some voice chats. Did a voice chat with a lot of you guys yesterday. Had a really good conversation with some of you guys. A lot of really smart people in there. So check it out if you guys are interested. Link down below. If you want one free month, if you sign up and deposit at least $100 over on BYDFI or BloFin, you got 2 more days for this one, the 10K worth of ETH giveaway based on trading volume. You get 20% off your fees with my link, and BloFin as well, 20% off your fees with my link. Remember, if you deposit at least $100 on either of these, make sure you open a support ticket in the Discord with your email or your UID, and I'll give you one free month. We'll give you one free month in there. So let's get into the TA. I mean, the thing right here that's kind of telling me you may come down a little bit farther. One, you got a blood diamond on the 5-day that confirms in 4 days. We'll keep an eye on that. It does look kind of bearish right now. Let's address the elephant in the room. Some people, I'm sure, are talking about how this could be a bear market or a bull market cycle top here on the monthly that confirms in 7 days. I guess it probably will confirm unless you do really pump up, above, I don't know, 115, 120 or 117 or something before the month ends. It's possible if we do see a bottom now, but the thing here that I would kind of compare this to just a little bit is if you look at the 3-week here, see how you got one here, you got kind of your bear div, and now you got a green Heikin-Ashi candle, which is good. So that's still good there. Look at right here in September of 2021. We're in September, exactly 4 years later. You had the red dot, you confirmed it, and then you had, a nice little jump up in the coming weeks ahead. So, if it's like that, from that, I mean, that's obviously, this is probably tell us you're going up to like 200. That's probably not going to happen. But if it's something like that, sometime in October, potentially 150, 140, 150, 130, a new all-time high at some point in October, I think this would kind of tell us. And then if you can get that kind of green dot in October, like you had last time, October 21, then kind of a no-brainer on the next red dot, that would kind of be your bull market cycle top. So obviously, a lot of this market is almost done, but sometimes your alts can really ride, in quarter 4, in the last, few weeks of this. So just keep that in mind. More for short term, I'm still a little concerned. This could have been the bottom. You could jump from here, but 2-day not looking the best. It does kind of tell me that potentially, and I know a lot of smart people. I was talking to some people that were telling me for some reasons, I'm not the biggest like breakout kind of guy, but they were saying if you lose like 112, you're going to go to 102. And I kind of I'm looking at 102 here. I'm kind of looking at 102 for a September bottom. And, that's about, 17% down. It's a huge area, too, I would argue. Like, that's, like, your kind of big scene of the crime there. Obviously, here was scene of the crime, 108 right there, those 2 peaks. But here's, like, a really big area. And I think if you zoom out a little bit more... Oh, never mind. Actually, no. Oh, wait a second. Yeah, no, it's these 2 peaks. Yeah, it's those 2 peaks at 108 and then get kind of area right there. So 102, 103... Those are the big areas. I wouldn't get too concerned, probably unless you lost really 100. I think we're okay. I mean, you had this drop here, and I don't think it's going to be this bad. That kind of drop there, obviously, that was, a big thing. I mean, if it is this bad, you see an 84K in October, then maybe you had an early peak in August, but that's to be seen. I think we're okay so far. I wouldn't have too much major concern so far for that. Some of your lower time frames here would tell us, you got some deep anchor waves or whatnot, deep RSIs here. They would tell us there's an argument for a jump here. We'll see what happens. I could see this bouncing around, then coming down to 108 and then potentially 102 right there. So that's what I'm kind of looking at. And if you can get down to those points, that would bring for a really good October, in my opinion. Now, let's move on to the one people care more about, at least at this point in the cycle. Now, Bitcoin going down, 17% from the high would probably equate to Ethereum maybe 25, 27. This is going to be, I would say, a really kind of big area. If you really zoom out, yeah, that's what I meant to, that's what I was thinking. I was looking at the Bitcoin one, but right here, I'd argue, 37, that kind of area. Hit that by the end of the month, maybe 35. These potentials, huge, huge area. And, that would erase a lot of the pain. Now, the big thing, erase a lot of the pain. That would give you some pain, some fear, and equate to hopefully a big jump. And then, if you also could see a bull div kind of forming on this daily, that's probably end of month, early October, that you'll see this next green dot form. That would be a really, really good potential long signal, that daily. So if you saw something, if you saw price come down to here or something like this, and you were to try to go long as we dilly-dally around there, trying to long back up to this area, easily at least a 2-to-1 risk-reward ratio, something like that would probably do very well on the way up in October. And then, you could kind of use these spiral lines to guess where you could end up on October. I would say 50, yeah, maybe mid fives, and then if you can continue into November, you're looking at the 7,300. Things could get crazier. I'm not really seeing a case too much for 11K or 10K as of right now, but things can change. I would say most likely somewhere between 5,500 to 7,300 would be my range at the moment. So that's what I'm looking at right now. If you look at ETH Bitcoin, just quickly, that's coming down. I could see it coming down just a little bit more. This area is pretty big, 0.035 right there, come down a little bit more. And then probably the next daily green dot would kind of save the day and bring you up to your last rally on ETH versus Bitcoin into the end of the year. He'll probably dilly-dally on at some points into 2026 like it did in 2022. We'll see what happens. Bitcoin dominance, that's been jumping up a little bit. I think it will probably come up a little bit more if the market does go down a little bit more, but nothing too bad. Here you're kind of probably looking at the opposite, that trigger wave on the daily that may be forming to kind of bring you downward. I think sideways is more bullish and then probably roll over. Now, the big thing here for alts that we should talk about is you always had a big, alt rally in the post-halving year. This is 21. It happened early this one. Here, which I think the cycle is a lot more like, kind of 2017 into 2018 here, you had this kind of bottom there. I think that bottom is actually October right there. And you jumped up like crazy in November and December. Now, could that same thing happen even in January? Could that same thing happen? Maybe, maybe it can. You're due for that. So we'll see what happens with, the Fed and all that. You're probably going to have a cut in October, a cut in December, and then a pause in January. So theoretically, based on that, I mean, if you look here, this was a month before they paused. They paused January of this year, so it's December. I mean, if it's like that rally, I mean, you probably should be able to at least get up to kind of this point, a bit nice jump against Bitcoin for total 3 for altcoins, versus Bitcoin essentially. So there's still a lot of hope there, and this chart does look really bullish, especially in that 2-month rare bullish sign. So, for those afraid market cycle talk, everything's going to crash, this would be a strong argument against the market cycle top just yet. So keep that in mind. This is total 3 versus Ethereum. This is where the market peaked here. This was the peak for everything in January 2018. See how it came up? Nice jump up here. Here was earlier, it was 21, jump here, and then here was the market cycle peak, in November of 21 right there as things were going down. So it's a little weird, but if it's like this, then you could jump, you could rally, hopefully back up to these points. We'll keep an eye on this. Now, the altcoin that's been outperforming a lot of things held up extremely well here, AVAX. And I think that as long as you could hold 33, which you should, seems like you might here. I mean, this seems like an alien. It may come down if everything else comes down a little bit farther. But so far, it seems like it's kind of in outer space. It's in its own orbit here. Jumping up to 49 and hopefully 60 is absolutely in the cards what I'm looking for. And that's why, I got this trade in that's doing okay. So, we'll see what happens. We'll see what happens here. Money flow is still looking good. This is looking like your outlier. There's always some outlier that comes up while everything else goes down. So just keep that in mind. This is looking really good right now. Crypto.com came down a lot, hitting this area. It could come down a little bit farther. I think like a lot of other things, look at that. Look for this daily next green dot. Look for that 2-day next green dot trigger wave forming. That could give you a nice jump back up to potentially 40 cents. Squeeze always a big one. You have the 2-week green dot confirms in 5 days, so I think that should be continuation forward for another month to 2 months here. I think that looks okay. Solana came down. What I would say on Solana, you probably will see that trigger wave, by the end of the month, came down a little bit, hitting this area. Could come down a little bit farther, but I do think you still have a good shot. 400 is what I'm looking at. I guess, October, November, maybe a rejection from the spiral line doesn't quite make it up to 400, 3 something. That's doable too. Just following this trajectory. I still think you're on that general trajectory. People have asked about stellar lumens, XLM. I don't like the lower highs here. However, if you do get some momentum and break above, 61 cents, you could be well on your way to $1.50. But that's to be seen. We'll see what ends up happening with this. Total 3 as a whole too, rejecting from the same point. Unless this is a really lackluster, kind of bull run for Total 3, it could be. Anything's possible. It did make a new all-time high though. Unless it's really lackluster, you should eventually, break upward here. And I think, the same thing, kind of waiting for some of these trigger waves, waiting for a daily, eventually, if your average altcoin jumps up, I don't know, double 50%, you should be well on your way to 1.6 trillion. My cap would be maybe 2.5 trillion. That's over a double here. It could happen. It could definitely happen next month, 2 months. Things can get crazy sometimes. Dot, I don't know why it was some of these big depressors. Hopefully it jumps up, back up between $6 to $9. I'm looking for, so potential jump there. Alexa, we were looking at down really low. If you can hold, I don't know. If you can hold like 28 cents, you should be able to, jump back up. But this blood diamond, I don't know about that. Sometimes they come down to get all the stop losses, get all people, to give up, and then it comes back. So there's some potential on some of these, the tokens that have been really lackluster. Polygon hitting, another kind of big point here, maybe comes back to 20 cents. I don't know. I would hope you jump back up to, 30 cents and then up to 40 at some point here, but a very big depressing coin. And, kind of what I'll leave you guys with here essentially is if we go back to, just Ethereum, it's kind of the big thing is like, where do I sell? So 2 things, that I talk about in my free crypto DCA course on evanaldo.com is, DCAing out from October 1st to December 31st generally makes the most sense. Now, if it's October 1st and things are still, down, if the ETH is at 3,700, 3,800, lower than it is right now, and, you're trying to wait a little bit, which may be the move, we'll see. The no-brainer place to kind of take profits, get the hell out, I think would be this red dot starting to print or getting close, looking like it'll probably confirm, especially if ETH makes another new all-time high. And this probably will not print and confirm until at least like end of October, November. It could even be December. It's a large time frame. It's kind of hard to say, but that's what I would look at there. And that could be like your big place, just get out, you know what I mean? Kind of in the 4-year cycle. So there's that, that's essentially what I'm looking at right there. So, to kind of sum it all up, I think that we really got to pay attention over the course of the next 7 days. If I had to guess based on how Bitcoin looks, kind of based on how ETH looks, I would say you probably will drop a little bit lower, especially if you can't hold that 112, probably drop to 102. But then after that, I think there's a lot of potential here. So hope you guys enjoyed the update. Smash the like button, subscribe to the channel, and check out the links down below for the exchanges if you guys are interested in trading, and the Discord if you're interested for some additional TA. All right, guys, have a good one. Goodbye.